salary, correct?
Correct.
Now, the first thing that I want to ask you, so right now, if I'm making, as an H-1 member, $41,000, I pay 3% or I pay 1.5% of my salary, right?
It depends on your hire date. If you were hired prior to 8/1 of 03, you paid either 3% or 1.5%. If you were hired after 8/1 of 03, you pay the 3% or 1.5%, and it depends what plan you're in after that. You might have a buyout as well.
Okay. And if I'm, a deputy secretary in the department and I'm making, I don't know, $140,000 a year, I'm paying the same thing, right?
Yeah, 3% of salary, yes.
Right.
You're
But
paying a lot more,
Right. I'm making a lot more, right?
but you're paying a lot more.
So now you want to flip it and say, okay, the guy that's making $41,000 is going to pay the same amount as the guy making, or girl making $140,000, correct?
I want to say that the two people in your example are receiving the same benefit, and they would pay the same amount for that benefit. It won't happen in year 1 and 2 of our proposal, and it won't necessarily happen in year 3 or 4, but over time, it would equalize it. That's two different people receiving the same benefits, pay the same amount.
But clearly you would agree that the person making $140,000 a year has more disposable income than the person making $41,000.
They would argue probably that they don't. It depends on what their expenses are.
Well, we've seen how you like to spin the numbers in your other proposals, and obviously you're trying to
Objection.
spin the numbers again. So.
Just a-
If you go to slide 4, you say that the percentage of premiums paid by Commonwealth employees is 7.36%, correct?
Correct.
Now, who are we talking about there? H-1 members or everybody in the Commonwealth?
Everybody. What we did is we took the audited financial statements from the PBTF, and we took the total employee contributions and divided it by the expenses. So it's a blend. It doesn't take into account salary. It doesn't take into consideration single versus family, PPO versus HMO. It doesn't take into consideration any of those factors. It's just a straight employee contributions divided by expenses.
Okay. So, presumably, because this includes perhaps some clerical workers that are making less than H-1 members, or individuals that are making less than H-1 members, no matter what job category they're in, H-1 members potentially could be paying more than this, correct?
And they could potentially be paying less.
Okay.
If I look at the average salary for PSCOA of $49,000, I think it's $548. If they're taking advantage of the waiver and they're enrolled in an HMO plan, then they're paying $743, so their costs are less.
All right. And that is based upon somebody making what per year?
$49,548.
And is that what you averaged an H-1 member making?
Yes.
Okay, because when we were here the other day, somebody else from the Commonwealth said it was $62,000.
I can't justify that on my
Objection. I don't recall any testimony saying it was.
Well, we can get the exhibit out if you want.
Sure.
Yeah,
Well, get it out.
It's in the book.
I'd like to see it.
Okay. I don't have it with me, but
You're misleading the witness. I'd like to see
I'm
it.
not- I'm not.
I'd like to see the number.
okay. Give me your proposal book and I'll show you where it is. I don't happen to have it on.
You are referencing the number. I'd like to see it.
What average salary did you say that they were making the other day?
Look through the proposal. I don't have it here. You're representing that. You're
I
representing
recall
that it said
62,000.
$62,000.
I don't think that's right, Dr.
Then what was it?
I don't remember, but I remember what the scale
Well, it wasn't in the
was.
40s.
I remember what the scale was.
Okay.
My recollection was that it was around 50,000
Okay.
when you factored in the overtime
All right.
as the average. But as I recall, the salary scale that applies here, I think the top salary is around 66. I'm doing it off the top of my head. And the steps, there was a step right before that, I think it was 62. So I don't believe it was ever represented that the average salary for the unit was 62,000.
Okay.
Average salary for CO, $56,000.
Okay. So you said today it was what figure?
I'm using $49,548. I don't know what other salaries were used. I don't know if they include overtime.
Yeah, just to be complete here, these are my notes, so take them for what they are. the average CO is 56,000, the median is 51,000.
No.
Is the presentation.
And I stand to be corrected, I recall 62, but if that's what your notes reflect, I would agree.
And that is also a CO median and average, not an H1 unit. Median.
The notes say average CO, so that's how it was presented.
Todd, what Tara's talking about is what the 3%, 1.5% would be based upon, which would not include overtime, et cetera.
Okay, well, I was just trying to figure out, because last week they said 50-some thousand, and now we're hearing 40-some thousand, so. It would appear to me that they use which number is better at the time, but
Objection.
that's my opinion.
It all depends on what exactly we're looking at. Is overtime included? Is it the whole unit? Is it just the CO? Statistics.
And our numbers pull the H1 bargaining unit members,
Okay.
their annual base salary. It doesn't include overtime, and it doesn't specific to CO1 or CO2 or any of that stuff. It's the H1 bargaining unit.
Now, you talked about in slide number 5, you talked about the proposal, or the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, that had an annual cost increase to the fund of $15.2 million. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, when we talk about a flu shot, so you're figuring that on an average, a flu shot is going to cost, what, I don't know, $25 or something to that effect?
I don't know the exact numbers for what the consultant did. The assumed annual cost for the flu shots for employees and dependents was about $1.3 million
Okay.
of that.
So when you look at this 15.2 figure, let me first ask you this. Is that just for H1 membership, or is that for all PEBTF participants?
It's for all PBTF members.
Okay. So that goes beyond what we're proposing, correct? We're proposing changes to the H1 unit. We have nothing to do with all PEBTF membership.
Well, this slide just shows things that were enacted as a result of the PACA. I mean, the PBTF was required to cover the dependents up to 26, and they had to do the PPO and CDHP options to eliminate the maximums. The effective date of those, the dependents to 26, we implemented that, or we being the PBTF implemented that slightly earlier, but that was part of the requirements for PACA. So the PSCOA members benefited from those benefit enhancements as well.
Okay. Now, we talk about somebody getting a flu shot and that costing a certain dollar amount, and that's included within the $15.2 billion. Was there any projection on the savings that these preventative measures would save the fund? For example, I get the flu shot for $35, okay? That costs the fund $35. It may save the fund $100 because I avoided going to the doctor a month later. Was any of that savings included with, or calculated within this 15.2?
You'd have to ask Mike Casey from Aon Consulting. The way that it was presented to me, the net cost increase for providing this program was $1.3 million.
Okay. So you're not sure if that's an accurate figure then, is that correct?
I'm saying that's what the consultant said the cost of adding this benefit would be.
Okay.
Whether or not the consultant factored in savings from the flu shots, I can't answer that question. I can ask him, but I can't answer that today.
Okay. And turning to the next slide, slide 6, we also talk about preventative screenings under the Patient Protective and Affordable Care Act, and the savings that those would, or the costs that those would generate. And we see $5.3 million. The $5.3 million, is that H1 membership, or is that all PEBTF?
All PBTF.
Okay. And again, for this one, for example, by getting these early screenings, was there any study done on any potential savings these would generate?
Again, the $5.3 million represents the PBTF's net cost to this. I can confirm with the consultant whether or not he factored in any savings by providing these vaccinations. expensive to provide the vaccine than the savings. And this proposal, or these screenings, the significant cost was on the shingles side. The PBTF actually didn't have a lot of shingles claims, so this would be a large expense because we don't have the claims, there's not a lot of cost with it, but to provide the vaccine for those who decide to get it is pretty expensive. I think it was over $200 for a
And
vaccine.
aside from shingles, was there any calculation to your knowledge whether or not having a lung ultrasound done would produce any type of savings?
Again, I'd have to ask Mike Casey to see if he factored into the $5.3 million net savings from avoidance.
So we're not sure
Bill's
what
shaking his head no, so he's telling me Mike didn't do that, so I don't know. I'd have to verify that.
so we don't know what the $5.3 million necessarily represents.
Again, it was presented to me that that's the net cost to the PBTF. If we want to know if Mike factored in any savings, I'd have to verify that with him.
Sure. I mean, I'm just asking you because you're presenting this to us.
Right.
You know, and you're presenting this as an annual cost of $5.3 million, and I'm just trying to figure out whether it is an actual cost or whether there's going to be a savings component of it. Now, if you don't know, then we can just disregard this altogether.
Objection.
Well, but she did say that she doesn't know, exactly what the consultant figured, so I'm fine with that.
Right. It was
Can't beat you
presented
up
as
on
a
it.
net cost.
Now, the trust fund itself, you had mentioned about the trustees decide the level of benefits, is that correct?
Correct.
And your current proposal, proposal 3A, doesn't fund the current level of benefits, does it?
Well, I apologize, I'm gonna go back. Through the end of this contract, four years, it does fund the level of benefits, and there still is a reserve. And again, I know it says .73 there, and I did clarify that that doesn't include the new annual savings for the renegotiation of the prescription contract, but under this proposal, the reserve at the end of 14-15 is 2.1 months.
Okay. But we see a negative reserve in 15-16 and fiscal year 16-17, correct?
That assumes no changes in the next contract, yes.
All right. Well, that assumes that it's a 4-year contract, too.
Correct.
All right. And there's no guarantee that this is a 4-year contract.
No one has proposed that it be longer than 4 years.
Well, nobody has proposed that it, at least we haven't proposed that it's been 4 years. I don't know who has, but.
Sorry, we'll decide how long.
Sure. But let's assume that everything stays the same through 16 and 17 as you proposed in your exhibit. This almost guarantees that benefits have to be reduced, does it not? If the contribution rate from the employer stays the same through 16, 17, if the contribution rate stays as you propose it with employees through 16 and 17, benefits have to be reduced. How else can you pay for it?
There would have to be benefit changes. I can't testify to what those would be. The PBTF continually looks at ways to cut administrative costs and streamline programs, so I can't tell you what those changes would be. But as of right now, with the employer and the employee contributions and no plan design changes, if nothing else changed in 15 or 16, 17, you can see what the numbers would be.
Okay. So what I see the numbers are, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the numbers definitely show that the Commonwealth is going to be paying less than $440 for a couple of years, correct?
That's our proposal, yes.
The employees are going to be paying at least double, right? From that 7 point some percent to 20%?
The employee income